Welcome to the E-Show with Neil Ravin. Founded in 2013, the EHL has become the college placement leader on the East Coast. Sit back and learn more about the next step in your junior hockey career.
Welcome to the E-Show, presented by the Penalty Box Foundation. The Foundation's mission centers around their daily motto, we take care of our own, as they help out all of those within the hockey community who've experienced a catastrophic event. Learn more at penaltyboxfoundation.org. What's up? My name is Neil Ravin, and this is episode number 120 of the E-Show. On this week's episode, we head north and feature the Vermont Lumberjacks. Joining the podcast for the very first time, Gary Gill comes on to talk about his first year at the helm in Vermont. Gill reflects on taking over the team late in the summer of 2021 and talks about how far the group came as an entire organization over the course of the season. Further along, the E-Crew gets back together and goes through the toughest top 10 selection of the off-season to date. I'm joined now by Gary Gill, the head coach and GM of the Vermont Lumberjacks. How's it going, Gary?
Pretty good. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming on the podcast. I think this is actually the first time I've had you on the podcast. I apologize for that, not doing it during the season. But we're at the end of your first year, heading into your second year. When you look back on the 21-22 season, what are your initial takeaways?
I think my biggest takeaway from it is how much I enjoyed the parity in the league. Anybody could have been beaten on any given night. It didn't matter what team you were playing. Yeah. And so, I've been a part of other leagues that don't have this type of parity, but from top to bottom, it's a fun league to be a part of.
And in particular with the parity was your division. I'm not sure if you knew this, so maybe it's just my opinion, but the North Division was really the toughest division in 2020-21. Did you know that getting into it?
Jim Mosso had spoke to me about it prior to, and actually when I coached here about 7 or 8 years ago, it was pretty tough then. I don't know that it was as tough as it is now, though. Yeah. But I kind of knew that Avalanche. I knew Chris, and I know he puts a heck of a program together every year. The Wolves were doing the right things. Brett Trider down in Seacoast was doing the right things. It was fun. Yeah. But I'd rather play like that. I really would.
For sure. Around this time a year ago, maybe a little bit later, is when you actually took over in Vermont. Can you kind of take us through the process of how you ended up back in Burlington?
Well, I've been friends with Maurice for a long time. I coached his son. He didn't own the team when I was here before. And so I actually did coach his son then, and we had a good relationship then. And then throughout the years, they've had a couple openings here and there that Maurice has offered to me. And I just, at the time I was doing pro or other projects at the time. So I had to turn them down. And then I was speaking to Jim Mosso. I kept in contact with him over the years. We see each other at showcases and whatnot. And he reached out to me and said, hey, it looks like I'm going to be in the college ranks now, and they're going to be looking for a head coach. Are you interested? And after speaking with my wife a little bit, I said, yeah. And then obviously Maurice and Mrs. Rosales reached out to me, and we spoke a little bit about it. And, and in July of last year, I took the program over. So, yeah, Jim did a great job setting the team up for success for all the years. And certainly the transition was pretty easy from coach to coach. So, so that's let's hit the ground and running,
I do remember it happening very quickly in July. But when you took over, how quickly did you identify a former player of yours in Seth Gustin to come work with you?
Rather quickly, because I knew that we were going to, with the departure of Jack going to Worcester, so he could be closer to family and whatnot. I knew we were going to need a coach to go there. I had, obviously, as you said, I coached Seth in pro hockey, so I reached out to him and said, hey, we're looking for a guy to come in here and run the EHLP team for us and be my assistant. And his work ethic as a pro was second to none, and so made the fit happen real smooth for me because he knows what I like to do, and so we would be on the same page systematically right out of the gate.
Is that the key? Because you're one of two organizations that has a coach who is working with a player that, or a coach that used to play for him. The other one being Chris and Vinny down in the Avalanche. Is it as simple as they know your systems that makes it easier?
Yeah, I mean, I think that lends itself really well to the situation because you want to bring a guy in that one you can trust. That we're going to be on the same page. We're going to run the same things. Just like the Avalanche, and me and Chris have had this conversation. They run the same systems too. They're just a little bit different to meet the criteria of the premier level. So that when they step up to the EHL, it's a step up, and they can build themselves into that level, which is what we're trying to do. But having Seth come in and buy into it right out of the gate. If I say, hey, we're going to run a 2-1-2 piggyback, he knows how to teach that. I don't have to teach him how to teach that. He already knows how to do it. So that's huge, for a head coach that I can hand him the reins and let him go. I'll be honest with you. I was on the ice with him during training camp and maybe a couple practices after that. And then it was all Seth. I really stepped back and let him. Now, we talked about things and, massage things to get him where we wanted him to go. And I always watched practice, but I wasn't always on the ice with them because I wanted Seth to control his team. I got a big mouth. Most head coaches do. So if I get on the bench with Seth and, the guys are going to look to me because I'm the EHL coach, I didn't want them to do that. I wanted them to look to Seth. And so I stayed off the bench intentionally so that Seth could have that, instant respect and instant his team going to him.
Makes sense. And you mentioned how the two of you come on board late summer with the team in a way kind of already established. How tough is it as a coach to jump into a situation where the players are kind of already given to you as opposed to this summer where you get to recruit your own team?
Yeah, I mean, again, Jim did a great job setting this team up for success throughout his years and into the transition. The hardest part was really, though me and Jim are similar in some things, we are different in some things too. And so the transition from us with the players buying into what we were doing, we had times where, we had some guys that were like, well, we didn't do it this way last year. You're right, you didn't do it that way last year, But as a hockey, we try to keep instilling this in them. Like they could go to college hockey and play for a coach for a year, and he gets fired, and they bring in another coach. And then at the end of that year, he gets fired, and you bring in another coach. You're going to have to learn to adapt to different coaches if you plan on having a career in hockey. So we did have our bumps and bruises early, and I would say all the way up and through Christmas. That didn't mean we weren't playing well. We just couldn't get over certain humps. And then after Christmas, the Christmas break, I thought that the buy-in process had happened in a whole new light, and the guys were really bought in, and we worked really hard all the way to the end.
And I'm glad that you identified kind of that. I don't want to call it a turning point, but it felt like a turning point coming back in 2022 at both the EHL and EHLP levels. So first, looking at the EHL, one big reason for the stretch run that you went on was the addition of Lenny Perno. Can you talk about what he did for you guys in net?
Well, not to crap on our other goaltenders that we had there, Josh Kotai and William Billiquay. Not to crap on them. We were looking. We had me and Seth and the goaltenders had a couple conversations about. We're in games. We're so close. We just can't. When we have a breakdown, and it is junior hockey, you're going to have breakdowns. When you have a breakdown, you got to have a guy that can just steal a save from you at a real timely part of the game, and that's what Lenny brought for us. He was able to steal, a couple saves that maybe one of our other guys didn't make because we had a breakdown in front of him in the D zone, or we had a breakdown in the offensive zone or neutral zone, whatever it may be. But Lenny was the guy who could make that save just long enough to keep us in it and allow us to regroup and go back after it. Lenny brought that to the table, his constant compete level, and his constant, he was unwavering, like nothing. He was the calmest, coolest junior goaltender I've ever had. He just, nothing really rattled him. He didn't like losing, but nobody does. He took it to heart, but he never pointed the finger at anybody else. If the puck went in the net, it was his fault. That's how he looked at it. And, we had done some video where I showed him it's not your fault. There's nothing you can do. But he's also been really well trained through his career so far in juniors of identifying what happens in the play coming at him. But he's so mature. He's such a mature goaltender. He works really, really hard, and he's a gamer for his team. He's 100% supporting every guy on his bench, everyone. So,
and he gave you a chance, in that Wolves series. I mean, it really could have gone either way. I know it's kind of hindsight at this point, but to see how far the Wolves ended up making it in the postseason, does it make you feel like a bounce here or there and we get to that same exact point?
Well, I do agree that series could have went either way. The Wolves they were playing hot too. I mean, they were riding a hot guy as well, and they were playing pretty well. I'll just say, I don't know that it came down to goaltending. I think it came down to discipline in our third game on what we were going to do and what we were capable of doing. We were capable of beating any team in the league. We had proven that. And there you go, parity. Parity. If you don't come to play for 3 periods, 60 minutes, you're probably going to lose that game. Yep. And so I don't think it came down to goaltending at all in that series. It did come down in the third game to discipline, unfortunately.
Yeah. And for the EHL, a disappointing ending, but a great stretch run. The same could be said for the EHLP, but I want to go back past like January for a second, because you actually said to me coming out of the holiday break, watch out for this EHLP team. They're about to do something special. What did you see?
I just saw, like, those guys, they had a different aura about them in their locker room. There were no egos in that locker room, as far as, not every team has egos at the EHL level. But those guys, they were just hardworking, talented young men. They worked really, really hard. They believed in themselves. They believed in Seth. Seth did a great job of firing them up and giving them the right information at the right times. And, again, with a little bit of feedback between ourselves, me and him. But I just felt like they were going to do something really, really special because of the way they played the game all the time. They were down against the Avalanche before playoffs. It was a game in our barn. They were down. I can't remember the exact score, but they were down by quite a few goals, and they just battled back and won the game. And I was just that sense of urgency when they go down a goal was very impressive to watch a younger group of guys do.
And then they get into the postseason, and it's an offensive explosion, basically, for 4 games to get them to the finals. You mentioned earlier how it was always you wanted to make sure it was Seth's team. I know you couldn't come to the finals regardless, but to see the whole thing play out, to see Seth get to within really a goal of the championship game, while it's disappointing, how shortly after were we able to tell, hey, Seth, like, hey, what you did with that group was pretty impressive?
Almost instantly. That game was over when they lost and got knocked out. And, when you get knocked out, it's hard on a coach too. Like, we want the best for those guys, and, we're competitors too. We want to win. But almost instantaneously, that game was over. And, me and Seth had a ritual that we would call and talk right after the games. And he reached out to me, and we talked. Well, actually, I'm sorry, I reached out to him, and I told him, hey, hold your head high. Tell all your boys to hold their head high. What they were able to accomplish this year, and what he was able to accomplish being his first year coaching, that speaks volumes of Seth's character and the character of the boys in that locker room. So, yeah, I pumped his tires right as soon as that game was over. There's no shame there. They made it to the frozen finals. No shame at all in those type of players, because, to win a championship, the moon and the stars all have to align. I don't care how good your team is. You got to get those lucky bounces. You got to get that one goal that you probably shouldn't get. All that stuff has to come into play. So they did a wonderful job.
For sure. And now you get the chance to turn the page. And as I mentioned earlier, recruit your own teams in a way. But you also have a chance to bring some of those guys back, some of the players, especially who made it to that Frozen Finals in the EHLP. How valuable do you think that experience will be for that group that comes up?
Well, winners breed winning. And they were able to do a lot of great things. We are going to move a couple of those guys up. Hayden Bullock is going to come up. Bobby Voss is going to come up. We're going to bring up. We're going to give a few other guys some opportunities to come up and give it a go. Cam Budway. But there's a lot of guys there that we want to create that pipeline from our EHLP to our EHL team. Now, does that translate into more wins this year? Hey, who knows? Every year is different. We don't know. But the one thing we're going to do is continue our culture and the way we build our product and the branding of our product. So those guys, I think, will lend itself to what, the Vermont Lumberjacks stand for. So wins and losses, I'll never predict anything like that. We could go, God forbid, we could lose every game. But one thing's for sure, the culture will be good. And the from an organizational standpoint as well, will be solid from top to bottom.
And that's what it's all about. Well, thank you for coming on the podcast. I know it was the first time. We'll make sure this happens during the season as well, this upcoming year. And enjoy the rest of the off season.
Thank you. You too. Thanks for having me.
Thanks again to Gary Gill for coming on the podcast this week. Apologize again. It was only the first time for him coming on. I've somehow never had him on during the season, but a good sport about it. And now let's bring in this week's eCrew. I only have Jeff and Anthony this week, but guys, it's time to make another top 10. And I may venture to guess this may be one of the toughest ones so far for us.
A lot of good names. I feel like we got this is going to be a nice mix, I think, too, Neil and Anthony, of some original guys, possibly with the initials L and D, maybe the top of our list. Probably the most known player to hit to don a Vermont Lumberjacks jersey in the history, and is up there in quite a few all-time categories. But some more good coach stories too. We've known a couple of the coaches before Gary Gill and Seth Guston came into town. So yeah, let's begin, huh?
Another mistake by me. I didn't wear my Wizards jersey during the Wizards podcast. I have a Vermont jersey downstairs. I dropped the ball for the second time this offseason.
It's okay. We won't talk.
Come on, Neil.
But let's start with a quick story because we love stories. Can we go back to when Seth Guston took the puck off the side of the head ear area during the finals?
Yes. So
this is canal.
Yep, this is during an EHLP game in the Frozen Finals. I want to say it was against the New Hampshire Avalanche.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, I think.
And so Chris and Chris Rousseau was on the call with me, and the press box was pretty much behind the benches. And I saw it happen in real time. It was almost slow motion. The player on the Lumberjacks made a pass. The player on the other team deflected the pass, and as soon as it went off the stick, I saw it go right towards Seth, and it just got him like right by the temple, or I think like on the ear. And, he went down, but he got right back up, and he was yelling at his players to just keep them in the game. Like, hey, let's get this line out. Let's just keep going. Let's go. And I think it was Rochi who had the towel up to his ear. And Chris and I were just like, look, like he's still barking at his players. He's still in the game. And he's just completely in the moment. And I thought that was amazing.
Right. I have that picture somewhere, right? Because the Hicklings got a great picture of that.
Oh, they did. That's right. Yeah, because it was like a slice right on like the inner, that inner part of your ear. That thing opened right up.
Did you call it live, Anthony?
Yeah.
Well, no, did you announce it on the air that you like saw it happen?
Oh yeah. Well, I think Chris and I were audibly shocked. Like, oh my goodness, Seth just took a puck in the ear off the side of the head. And we both marveled again on air how he was still talking to his players. He was still trying to rile up his, the troops, so to say.
That's right.
And
Pucks in deep, rally the troops. You know the drill, Anthony.
I've said it multiple times on the podcast throughout the season. Having finally been able to meet Seth during one of the later showcases, he just really is one of the nicest players or nicest coaches I've met since working in this league.
I would agree.
Yeah, very personable guy, very passionate, young, good hockey mind. Don't know much about Seth's playing career, actually. I'm like, my God, look at that picture.
Yeah, he did play for Gary Gill professionally for a little bit, which is
he also played club hockey at Niagara University.
Yeah.
And from his sophomore through senior year, he was the captain.
Oh, that's where Rich DiCaprio is a former Niagara, or no, not former. You're always a Niagara. What are they? Purple Eagles?
They're I think so. Hockey. Yes.
Forget about that. Cody Campbell.
Look at that. Look at Anthony's got the seat down for those exact 3 years.
Well, because I had asked them, the Lumberjacks came to Jersey Shore Arena, their P team, to play the 87s for 2 games. And I'd asked him about it. I said, is it true that you were the captain of Niagara for 3 seasons? He said, yes. He said, during his freshman year, he was a very vocal guy. He admitted wasn't the best. You can see he put up 4 points in his freshman year season, but the coach
defenseman. Hold on, defenseman. I
was gonna say he's a demon. Yeah,
actually, yeah, that's fair.
Make that clear.
But the coach had come up to him at the start of his sophomore season, and he was funny about it. He said, "I thought I was getting in trouble," but he said the coach is like, "No, we notice you're a very vocal guy. The players seem to rally around you. We're going to make you captain." And for him as a sophomore, he was just thinking, "Okay." He just took it in stride, and I think that's very indicative of his character. And if you've ever spoken to him during a showcase or anytime you're playing against the Lumberjacks, you really get to see the kind of person he is, and just all around terrific guy. And he was able to get to the Frozen Finals in his first year as a coach.
Yeah.
I think that's nothing short of impressive.
For sure.
Taking
over for Jack Lowry, too, the former coach of the year. That's now the Worcester Railers premier coach. We had a couple of coach trades go on during the offseason. Jim Mosso, former Lumberjacks coach, left us for UNE, but UNE did a heck of a job.
Like you say, left us too.
Left us,
dumped us.
But then we still see him at all the showcases, just wearing the UNE stuff and winking at us and hanging out.
Exactly. So, well, let's get this started. I know Jeff kind of hinted on the initials earlier of a player that probably starts our list.
Has to be number 1, right?
And that would be a player at UNE, actually with Jim Mosso there at UNE, Logan Descanio. And not sure if you guys knew this, but he's an EHLP to EHL alum. He actually started in the EHLP, if I can get my computer to load and show you.
How long was he? Was he there for a full season? Or was it a quick little? Yeah,
it was.
That's what I thought. Quick cup of coffee. 10 points in 5 games. I've had enough. Thank you very much.
Yes. So put it this way: he began the year in the EHLP and said, "Hey, I'm gonna just average 2 points a game.
Yeah. Do you want me up in the year?
And show that you need me at the EHL level." Where he then put up 37 points that season, combined regular season and postseason, 60 points the next year. And then 96 the year after. So
that season that we will never know. This is the one team that we really thought could make a very, very deep run, high scoring team, over 200 something. Was it 211 goals or something that year
crazy.
Scored
And
between Descanio and Buffaline. And
what's funny is, so Descanio, Vermont was supposed to play the Avs in 2019-20.
Yeah.
And the Rangers were supposed to play the Wizards, right?
Yep.
Now, could Vermont have won and the Rangers have won, and then they're both in the finals? Yes. One of Descanio's roommates is Billy Gerard at UNE.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
So constantly there has been conversation over the fact that we would have won. No, we would have won, but we'll never know, obviously, right? But
all those teams were loaded, including this Lumberjacks team,
right? Ridiculous. But Descanio, by record standards, it is the highest scorer in league history when you combine all game totals between regular season and postseason with 194. So, he's definitely on this list.
kind of a big deal.
Kind of a big deal. So That's one. Do you want to stay at UNE?
Yeah, I mean we can. Might as well keep
So
it
if we're gonna
symmetrical.
stay at UNE, we'll just work one spot down the list.
So this was Buffalo, Jordan. We went
Buffalo.
back and Buffalo.
Jordan
We went back.
Jordan Buffleen.
Buffalo. We went back and forth that season a million friggin' times. Me, Neil, Brittany, I believe you too, Anthony, at showcases and yeah.
So
Well, 'cause
Buffalo
Jeff-
actually he played the full year, that 17-18 year in the EHLP.
73 points in 43 games.
Like,
Jeez.
and then the scoring transferred over. It continued at the EHL level.
Right. It wasn't that they were just blowing apart lower competition and then moved up and struggled. They just kept on humming when they got there. But Anthony, what were you going to say before?
I was gonna say, it was the 2019-2020 season where we had called the game together, right? You did the play-by-play, I did the color.
Up at Exeter in our small little platform together.
Right behind one of the benches.
Yes.
Yeah,
You're
and the
right.
Lumberjacks had scored on a 4-on-3 power play.
Oh,
And
yes.
Was it Descanio who scored the goal?
I think you're right. I think it was this dynamic Lumberjacks, Toscanio, Buffalene, and it's Jordan.
Yes,
Yep.
it's Jordan.
Even though it's Giordon. It's like those Jeffs, those G
Well, hang on. I mean, yes, I'm gonna be a homer.
Guys.
I'm gonna be a homer and bring up the 87s again.
Here we go.
Well,
It's like Neil's from when Neil mentions Maine. Now we're gonna go Anthony 87. Ding.
Well, this year for the EHLP team, we had a forward, Jeffrey Boker, and he's from Pittsburgh.
That's right.
And his name was spelled the same way, GEO.
Yeah,
and then I was talking to him during the playoffs, and he said, "Oh, I have a younger brother, Jordan." And I go, "Oh, nice." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. How does he spell his first name?" And he said GEORDAN.
Oh,
consistent.
Yep. So for Buffalo, I'm pretty sure it's Buffalene because I'm pretty sure that's what he told me before we had called that game together, Jeff. If he's listening to the podcast and I am wrong, then feel free to call me out. But
wish you could call in, Jordan.
We're not,
we're not posting this live. Wish you could call us in and give us a shout, but we'll figure it out. But
I mean, we can't go wrong with those two forwards who each spent 3 years with the program. Want to just keep going at number 3?
I'll say Egan Schmidt, right? A more familiar face that was just with us this year, and then congratulations to him for getting moved up to the NA and had a really good season, I believe, with the Johnstown Tomahawks. Wasn't sure maybe in the beginning if he was going to get a ton of time, and then just kind of blew the team away from what I think I heard from the reports of coaches. And
his EHL numbers.
You just scrolled way past them.
Oh, they're right here.
Okay.
When you combine regular season and postseason, 125 points of his own, right? In his time in the NA this year, he put up 36 and 45 games in the regular season.
That's impressive.
Another 2 points in the playoffs. Another EHLP alum. So think about
Lumberjacks do that well.
Descanio, Buffalene, and Egan Smith so far all played EHLP games on that 2017-18 Lumberjacks team. That 2017-18 Lumberjacks EHLP team was a wagon. If those 3 guys were all on it.
And unfortunately, they could have made a deeper run in the playoffs, but that's the issue with being a premier coach. You have to know that if you got guys that are going to perform at that level, well, they're going to move on to the big team. That's the unfortunate circumstance of coaching and playing at the premier level, is that those guys keep playing the way they are, they're going to move up. So
should we retell a story that's been told before on the podcast?
Does this have to do with you being an uncle to a former lumberjack?
No, not. We haven't got to that story yet. It involves
he resides on this team. Oh, okay. Yeah, bring it up.
Okay, so I know I've told this story on the podcast before, but it's been a few months. So Egan Schmidt, as we just mentioned, began this past year, his age-out year in the EHL, had the chance to move up to the NA mid-season, and really it was obviously the right move when you look at all the points that he put up in the NA, right? So, but prior to that, he played for the EHL All-Star team that faced Curry College and UMass Boston, and he was one of 4 3-year guys on that team. So all 4 guys were captains, but Egan was the C, the other guys were the A, right? So I've told this before. If you go to our Instagram and you scroll back far enough, you'll find our team picture from the All-Star week, right? What was awesome about what we did was if you swipe, they go from wearing their own jerseys to wearing the All-Star jerseys, right?
Yeah, that's right.
But the
That was
biggest
cool.
thing that you have to look for is the player that's sitting next to me, Egan Schmidt.
Oh, he has the same exact face, doesn't
Remember
he?
this?
Like literally same
Look
exact.
at his facial expression
Yeah.
while wearing the Lumberjacks
Remember it?
jersey. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Swipe. I swear his head is exactly the same.
And those are 2 different pictures. For
2 different
everyone at home
pictures.
following
Same
along.
angle,
Yeah,
same
literally the
facial
same
expression.
It was like the same. You could probably like measure the tilt going on to just to a T. Perfect.
We'll get
Yeah.
a protractor, Neil. We'll see what angle he tilts his head. I don't know. A lot of people have maybe a certain go-to pose when they have their picture taken.
I guess.
I can buy it, but Neil, I just want to
more
go
handsome side of his face, I guess. The angle is just like, this is what I like.
I want to go back to your comment about going from the EHLP to the EHL. And first off, I just think it really speaks volumes about the EHLP and how different organizations can send guys to the next level and still play really well at the EHL. We have 3 players so far. I'm not saying any of these players should make the top 10 for this year, but you look back at this year's P team that went to the Frozen Finals, Trent King, who scored in his first game when called up to the EHL during one of the showcases.
Yep.
Bobby Voss, Hayden Bullock, Arhip Sidorovic. He had 27 points in 19 games. And you think, how many of these players are going to light it up in the next couple of seasons with the EHL team if or when they get called up? So we talk about that pipeline, and looking at the EHLP team from this year, that pipeline is still in very good shape.
Yeah, and Gary Gill didn't want to give away all of his secrets earlier, but he did mention at least Bobby Voss and Hayden Bullock moving up to the EHL. But you have to think Arhip too. You have to think Trent King as well. No cheapies, Anthony, as you like to say.
No cheapies.
Well, that's what one of the EHL players told me during one of the first showcases.
So I don't know if they're on this list. We have to see what they do in the EHL, to your point, right? Those 3 guys. Yeah. But we got 3 so far. The 3 biggest names probably that jump out at us. And Logan Descanio, Jordan Buffaline. I guess we got to check on that. And Egan Schmidt. Obviously, those are the 3 all-time leaders in scoring. I guess that means if we don't include the other guy that went on over 100 points, we'd probably be making a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be Kyle MacDonald. I actually remember specifically the year that the Lumberjacks got knocked out by the Wizards, which I believe may have been their Frozen Finals year for the Wizards. No, it was the year before. So this was the year that the Wizards had the MVP and the Rookie of the Year and Panzika and Chouette. They knocked out Vermont to face the Avs, who then beat them and went on to win the championship. But that 2017-18 year was another, look at this, EHLP to EHL Lumberjack. 3 years for Kyle Macton. I almost said
MacDonald.
You got PTSD.
I seriously do. But I remember when the series ended, like he stayed at his blue line on a knee, like soaking it all in for an extra few minutes, and like actually helped like push the nets back over the wall. Like it was like kind of like a weird moment in a way, but he was kind of just soaking it in for one last time before we went off to Nichols College. So, but like I said, he's the 4th guy in their program that went over 100 points. We have to include all 4 because to go over 100 points is impressive.
We would look stupid if we did not. So.
And all 4 guys spent some time in the EHLP.
Yep, that's the EHL commercials we talked about on the E Show during the regular season.
So here's the rest of the all-time team that we put together this past year, Jeff. Let's keep in mind, we're heading into season number 10 of the EHL. The Lumberjacks have been in the league for 8 years. The ninth year, technically, they were called the Washington Junior Nationals, but that was the sale that brought the team to Burlington. But there's some pretty big names here.
Marcus Colmels, didn't he play in the North American Hockey League?
Yes, he did. Which I think we should go there next.
Let's do it.
I don't.
Colmels, yeah, he was a while ago. He was back in your like inaugural year.
My first year in the league. Yeah. I think you called it my inaugural year.
Yeah, the inaugural year of Neil Raven.
Did he play for Johnstown? I think.
We're gonna scroll down.
Oh no, you. Oh
Kenai,
no,
Kenai River,
the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Knights, and then Kenai.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember, because my first season working with the Titans was the 2016-17 season, and I think, and you could actually see it on Elite Prospects. He actually was among several players from the North American Hockey League that were selected to play for Team Latvia. Marcus Colmels, Vito Janssens, and Merrick Mittens, both of the then Aston Rebels at the time.
So
Phillips Buncis, who I think played for Johnstown.
What's interesting about Kumels is for the EHL, he only technically played 1 year, but he played 2 years with Vermont. When you go back and see that the year prior, 2014-15, he played in the Met League, which is what doesn't exist anymore. The Met League essentially became the EHLP. So he's almost an EHLP alum also.
Yeah. Almost a 2-year lumpy. Yeah.
Like by default, right? But as Anthony mentioned, he went up and played a couple seasons, or 3 years, I should say, in the NA, and now plays for the University of Alaska Fairbanks Division I. Yes, Jeff, my inaugural year, that 15-16 season, he was really good. See this picture? This is his Kenai River NA picture. Look at that Arby's sponsorship, top left corner.
Arby's, that'll make one Jim McCabe very pumped.
That's it. We need to get Arby's to put their logo on our jerseys.
Curly fries for everybody. We're going to Arby's.
So we already have 5 guys here.
And
we haven't even mentioned the player earlier that Jeff pointed out, likes to call me his uncle.
Another good story we've talked about on the show a few times.
I don't know why Corey Doney liked to call me his uncle.
Only right to use our first D man on the Colmels was the first D. Sorry,
Corey Doney. I know I said this last week, so it's gonna sound stupid. I said it about Kolye Benkoskis because Kolye was probably the fastest skater. I think Doney was probably the best skater. There is a difference, in my opinion. Yeah. Like, he couldn't move like nobody else up and down the ice.
Someone like I know we are all not very big Sidney Crosby fans, but someone like Crosby. So we'll go to Connor McDavid, someone that can move and make a move in very small amount of real estate. So a guy
I cannot wait for Doney to hear the fact that you just compared him to Connor McDavid.
But someone of like that skill set, like you're saying, but has like the speed, but also the agility and the elusiveness to kind of move on a dime and that kind of stuff. Because you can be, it's just like in the NFL, you can be a burner and run straight, but that doesn't mean you run the best routes and that kind of thing. So yeah, I get what you're saying.
I'll never forget when I had Anthony Del Tufo on the podcast, who played for the Revolution, played for Maryland Black Bears from New Jersey, I think. And
Grizzle guy.
Yes, Grizzle plays at Plattsburgh now.
Sponsor of ours.
And he talked about the COVID year, 2020-21, how they were limited because New York was so shut down to just really playing like inter-squad type scrimmages. And he was like, I've never played with a player like Corey Doney. He goes, it's a different speed. It's a totally different speed. He goes, thank God he's on my team.
So he barreling down the wing.
Yes. So that's 6 guys so far. And Doney won't like when I say this because he'll feel offended. My favorite player in Lumberjacks history hasn't been named yet. Mason Emoff was a game changer.
That's what I thought.
He was tough as hell. He went through everything. There was an injury he had 1 year where I want to say he got like cut with a skate plate or something like that. Like he battled through everything. It's not because he's another EHLP to EHL. But he just, I mean, Anthony pointed this out on a previous episode. Like sometimes it's tough to see where guys truly rank on elite prospects because of the number of games played. Like what Emhoff did in 51 games, what would that have equaled if he had played the same like 151? That Descanio almost got to. But Emhoff, yes, part of the Lumberjacks EHLP first, which he won an MVP.
101 points in 41 games.
Like it was out of this world. Out of this world. Obviously, he won all of these awards that year, 2016-17.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I like to spread the love, MVP and forward of the year. When you do that, you win
get it
both.
all.
So he was the EHLP
take home every
MVP
prize.
and forward of the year in 16-17. Actually, then went and played a season in the CCHL in Canada, then came back and wore the C for Vermont. Really, them making it to the 2020-21 Frozen Finals was really the buildup of that 18-19 Lumberjacks team that lost to the Wizards in Game 3 of the third period of Game 3, one step away from the finals. And I'm sure Mason would say this. I'm sure Jim Moss would say this. If they were healthier, because Mason was battling a crazy injury, they may have won that series and got to the finals for the first time that year, 18-19. Obviously, we already touched on the fact that 19-20, we didn't even finish the playoffs. So what he did as a captain for Vermont that 18-19 year, I think turned the corner for them to then make it in 2020-21. So I got to put Mason Emhoff on this list. And it's crazy. We're already at 7 games.
And they've had a lot of good players in their history. And like we said earlier, they've been around almost an OG, almost an original team from the EHL. And something we looked at last week too, guys, with the transition or the transgression, I guess you would say, lack of better words, about like how they came from their starting year. So like the 2014-15 season, we all known the Lumberjacks as a high scoring team. They only scored 107 goals that year. Then you see some of these teams each year, they got more and more high scoring, 113, 158, 163, 211 goals in 2018. That's pretty good. 209 in 2019-20, that epic team we've talked about. But you look at their movement in the win column, right? 16-24 to 17-22, 22-18, 24-24. So each year they've really gotten better, just like the Worcester Railers we talked about last week on that episode. So it's a credit to the ownership and to guys like Mason Emhoff and Descanio. You get those kind of guys in your system, show that you can win. And we haven't talked about Jim Mosso yet on this episode.
I know. I mean,
he was the EHLP coach, moved up to the EHL. He was there for how long? 5 years, 6 years? I feel like he was there a long time.
His first year with the program was my first year, 15-16. He took over as the EHL head coach in 16-17, I want to say. Because
it was Doc T. Castillo that was the first coach, I remember. Yes. And then Jim took over for him.
I mean, the credit that I have to give Jim is getting that 2020-21 team to the Frozen Finals.
Yeah.
That was the year from hell for that program. Obviously, everyone went through a lot because of COVID.
Couldn't play in Letty Arena. Had to go to Waterville Valley.
That nobody had to go through more than Vermont did.
That's right. Yeah, because Vermont had the strict. I remember that they had the worst like restrictions as far as how you could play, who you could play, mileage wise. And that was the year you went and did all their games up in Waterville Valley too.
Well, I had to. They
had to move out of Letty, right?
Because from the beginning of the season to the beginning of December, they played 9 total games. Not home games, just 9 total games. They didn't play any at home because what they had to do is they would go out and they would go play 3 games and then they have to go back in quarantine for 2 weeks. Right. So like all of a sudden now you're 3 months in and you make the move to Waterville Valley. COVID hits. You got to shut down until after the new year. Now you come back after the new year. We're up in Waterville Valley. It's the first game. We're in warmups. Piece of glass smashes into a million pieces.
Mm-hmm.
I remember Jim looked at me and said, they don't want us to play hockey this year. And I said, it feels that way. He's like, but trust me, this team is good enough to get there. Because we touched on Egan Schmidt, right? He was a big part of that team. Paul Fine-Lease was a huge part
he was
of that
another
team.
one I think we should talk about maybe putting on this team. He was dynamic.
And Jim was right? They ended up making it to that 2020-21 Frozen Finals. I think ultimately just the wear and tear of like playing over 30 games from January 1st to the end of March caught up to them.
At the end, yeah.
But they were fantastic. I mean, David Raduzzi was the backbone of that team. We haven't even talked about Jeff's favorite name yet call on the
Deuce,
PA.
the Doozy Meister. And they won that first game against the Rangers. We know it was controversial. We won't go there. But they all had our heads on a swivel. Hashtag Whistlegate. Is that what you can say?
Hashtag Whistlegate.
But remember, we all had our heads on a swivel. We were like, whoa, Rangers were the deepest team. They ended up becoming the champions that season, but the Lumberjacks knocked them off in the first game. We were like, oh, here we go, Neil. The Lumberjacks about to make a deep run, and then, unfortunately they didn't. But still, like you said, a credit to them, because I remember every week we did the podcast, we kept reviewing each division, and it was, I think they were 3-6 after 9 games, or 6-3.
Something like crazy, right?
And it just stayed there every week. We're like, still 3-6, still 3-6, still 9 games. It was just it was bonkers. It was nuts, but they persevered.
Yeah, we have 7 guys so far.
Get a goalie in there. Just put Raduzzi on that list.
I was
let's go over his. Yeah, let's go.
He's ranked as the 10th winningest goalie in league history with 39 wins. At Nazareth now, with another EHL goalie and Matt Sales, I want to say. So we'll see them together this fall when we face Nazareth with our all-star team.
Former New Jersey 87, I'll say it for Anthony.
And Protect Duck.
That's correct. What up, Terry Watt?
So, yeah, we have to have a goalie in there. That gives us 8 so far. We probably don't have the room for Connor Carbo also.
Yeah.
But it's worth mentioning what he did, because he kind of climbed up with Jim Mosso, right? So I've said this so many times on this episode, another EHLP to EHL alum, right? But I remember specifically with Carbo, he came up at the same time as Coach Mosso, basically, right? So he spent 2 years with the EHLP, then 1.5 with the EHL, because he got he got asked to come to Wentworth halfway through that season. And in one postseason run, he knocked off Curry College and he knocked off UNE, and then had a chance to complete the trifecta and get through Endicott as well. And it was one of those like hot goalie moments. Like he just came in and just stole the net and like almost put Wentworth on his back all the way through the CCC. But it was just so cool to see that even in the middle of a season, our players are ready for the next level. They don't need to go through the full year of development. They're ready right now. Yep. And he almost carried them to the CCC. We don't have room for him on this top 10. We already have our goalie, Anthony.
I think we only have like one per team.
Yeah, there's just too many guys that we need to still talk about when we only have 2 spots left.
Till we get to the Rangers, we might have 2 goalies on that
God.
all-time team. That's a team with.
I can already hear Rich goalies. Now. Oh, for us, you probably should increase the number up to about 15. Well, no, it's called the top 10 for a reason. So, I mean, names that we haven't touched on yet, right? Dom Kuziak, 2-year guy for Vermont. Andrew Bayshart, another EHLP to EHL alum at Plattsburgh. Paul Fine-Lease, we mentioned earlier, was part of that 2020-21, a 2-sport athlete at Middlebury, playing golf and hockey. Came on the podcast this past year. Glenn
Robitaille. Bill Belichick will be calling you.
Yes. Glenn Robitaille plays at Manhattanville with Mason Emoff. Austin Marini was the 3rd member of that Toscanio Buffalian line, right? You got the 3 guys there. I mean, Andrew Barber was an excellent player. He's part of the 17-18 All-Star team that faced UMass Boston. The first year we did it, Tyler Oziski is at Potsdam. Like, we only have 2 spots left. We're going to piss somebody off.
Happens every week. Get used to it.
I mean, we haven't even talked about some of the other players from this past year, right? Like they can bring
Victor
back
Deneau's up there. Look
they
at
can
him
bring
in the
back
top
Victor
10.
Deneau. They can bring back Guernon. Aiden LaValle
Yeah.
wasn't on the all-time team, right?
Yep.
We got guys like Tyler Penry somewhere on this list of top scorers as well. We only have 2
Brandon
spots
Clark.
left.
Yeah.
This is tough.
I mean, you got to stick with. I mean, you look at guys that average over a point per game. We put Kuziak on there yet?
We have not put Kuziak on there yet.
It's like Kuziak, Victor Deneau stands up. I can't believe Victor Deneau's played 71 games with the Avs now, or Avs Lumberjacks at this point. Whoops, sorry, Vermont. Whip out the fellow North rival.
Signed to come back this year, right?
Is he? So he'll be a 3-year.
Yep.
So he's gonna eclipse the 100-point mark. Knock on wood.
Knock on wood. I love that.
I don't want to jinx him.
I mean, this is where it gets tough.
Go anywhere.
We could go anywhere. We know that there's going to be somebody that's upset they're not on this list. Just to show Guernon's numbers also. Pretty sure they're like best friends because they're from Canada together, but also coming back this year. So
he's only 19. Another guy that can burn up the ice and down the ice.
Connor Foley hasn't been mentioned. He had a very shortish stint with Vermont, joining them later on in that 18-19 season. I mean, look at
those trade deadline guys, I think.
Look at this past year at Franklin Pierce. 32 points in 25 games. That includes a 4-goal game.
Good for him. Tyler Rago's Franklin Pierce Ravens.
Yep.
he would have us put him on this list.
Right.
I mean, there's so many different ways that we can go here. And we really haven't, besides Schmidt, mentioned anyone from this past year's team.
I was gonna say, so do we put like a newer
You could.
do we go with like a Deneau or a Guernon to get at least one?
Or do we go in LaValle?
LaValle's a good one too.
I mean, there's been so many good players.
Well, Aiden LaValle also played with the EHLP team. So do you want to keep that
again? Look at this
going, Neil?
This 17. Let's pause. This 17-18 EHLP team.
Gotta look them up.
Buffaline, right? Obviously, we talked about the 73 points before. Egan Schmidt, Aiden LaValle, Logan Descanio, Aaron Dameron.
Tom Skold, I remember. Yeah.
Look at some of the names on this list.
Yeah.
This team was loaded. Absolutely loaded.
And then Carbo was their goalie?
Yep.
Carbo and Eric Roy?
I mean, this team was on another level.
Yeah.
Jim also will like the fact that we talked about them.
Right.
I think we have to put LaValle on this list.
I think we're leaning towards him.
Heading to Buffalo State this fall, part of an awesome class of players that we're actually sending off to Buffalo State this fall includes 2 guys from Vermont in LaValle and Tyler Penry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then 2 guys from the Little Flyers and Chris Blango and Kyle Patton. That's a pretty strong 4-player class from the EHL.
They can make some noise. They'll put up some points.
And we're going to make some noise now because we're going to put LaValle on this list, but not Tyler Penry, right? So that could start a little bit of a fire.
Penry was a popular fantasy pick this year, too.
Ooh. I agree. So that gets us. What's funny is these guys, it looks like these guys played 5 years now when you put the years in like that, but they
16 to 20, 17 to 22.
They just move like, I mean, have I ever showed you while we're on this path? If we wanted to go like true, like all-time lumberjack, as I can't type. Aaron Dameron is like the all-time lumberjack. I got to show you guys this. He joined the program like, I want to say he was like 16 years old, like as young as you could possibly be with playing juniors, because he played 4 years EHLP and then 1 year EHL.
Wow. Look at
Like
that.
just the total number of games when you combined regular
It's
season and
200.
postseason.
137 in the
43.
EHLP, 43 in the EHL,
I'm using a
Playoffs,
calculator.
17 and 3.
180.
When you add all four of these together, regular
200
season,
exactly.
regular season,
If you include the
postseason,
20
postseason,
playoff games, yeah.
200.
200. Symmetric. Touchdown. Aaron Dimron, you're on there. And he's going to play.
Is he?
And he's going to SNU next year too to play
Yes.
for Walshy.
We got 9 guys.
That's how he's
Dameron
doing.
wasn't a part of the all-time team. Nope, not to set
Seth Gustin's fleeting year. Yeah, Dameron wasn't on that all-time team, huh? Wow. Like we say, we're not perfect. Maybe he should have deserved a spot on there. Not sure, but was he on our EHLP? Was he on the transition team though, Neil?
Oh,
Or
good
no?
question, Jeff.
And I feel like he should have been if he spent Emoff's there, Bayshard's there.
No,
No,
we have
Carbo. Carbo, Bayshard, Emoff, and the Lumberjacks all on that transition team. Still have Kuziak we talked about. Marini is another one.
It's amazing, man. I promise you, Marini will reach out if he's not on this list.
So should we?
No, we don't have to because of that reason.
No, we don't need the pressure.
I honestly,
We don't crack.
one of my favorite players when I first was starting in the league was Andrew Barber.
Now at Castleton.
Just finished at Castleton. Yeah, 4 years there, 2 years in the EHL. I would go here. 3D, 6 forwards, and a goalie.
You like those numbers too. That's two full lines with the one full pairing with one guy switching out.
And there's some names here that are going to be upset, but we
Yeah.
can't be kicking them all on the list.
James Boisvert, Daniel Barry. I think Barry was someone I got on that team last year because I remember he was a left shot, big slap shot guy.
Yeah.
Nate Foster, someone we didn't mention. Just trying to throw all those guys' names back out into the airwaves to give them the airwave honorable mention. if
Are
you will,
we
you
good
know?
with this list?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. Anthony, what do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
I think
just
it's a solid batch.
so many talented players, and the theme that Neil keeps bringing up, the EHLP to EHL pipeline that the Lumberjacks have, it just shows how good they are at player development and getting players to the next level.
Yeah.
And going back to what I said earlier, I look forward to seeing players from this year's EHLP team, Trent King, Arhip Sidorovich, Budway, like all of those guys to make their way up into the EHL. And I don't have a single doubt in my mind, all those players can become great producers and or great players for their EHL team.
100%.
Yeah, without a doubt.
100%.
Without a doubt.
So here's the list. Logan Descanio, Jordan Buffaline, Egan Schmidt, Kyle McDonald, Marcus Kummels, Corey Doney, Mason Niemoff, David Raduzzi, Aiden LaValle, and Andrew Barber. It's a damn good team. Of 10. It's a damn good team.
And which jersey do they wear for the all-time team?
Oh,
the
man,
flannel jersey or
That's
Has to be the flannel jersey.
That's a
Right.
great question. But that will do it for this week's episode. Next week, we go back to the South. We're going to go Team Maryland next week.
Ooh, Team Maryland, interesting.
So what will be interesting, Jeff, look at the way we did Team Maryland.
I know. I'm seeing Thomas Walker was a Wilkes-Barre Scranton Knights honorary member. What? Because of how much we love Thomas Walker's EHL Frozen Finals performance.
So let me figure out what year Team Maryland.
Like that's
Their
gonna be a
fir-
team. We put a lot of guys from like this past year's team too. Then
It was the first year was the 18-19 season.
yeah, they've only been
Yes. Okay. So this past year was just their 4th year. And it was Josh's. This past year was only Josh's 2nd year with the team.
What?
No, I thought it was his third. He came
Third
in
year,
at
third
the
year.
1920 season.
Yes, 3rd year.
Okay.
So when
Who
we
was the
made,
rookie year head
when we
coach?
made this list, Jeff,
I
we were
I
only
forget.
going off of 2 years, really, with Josh there.
Okay. Yeah, this past year's team was good too. So we'll have a lot of names from there to help pick from.
Yes, for sure. So we won't have the stars and the honorary members, probably.
Probably not. I'll have to drop that. Probably will drop that. But.
Well, that does it for our Vermont Lumberjacks episode. I will actually see Seth and Gus. Seth and Gus. Seth and I just combined his last name. Seth and Gary.
Seth Gonzalez?
Yeah, because Seth's last name is Gustin. I will see Seth and Gary this weekend out in Denver, along with a lot of other coaches at the CCM showcase. Looking forward to that, and looking forward to highlighting Team Maryland next week. So we'll talk to you guys then.
Thanks for listening to The E-Show. Learn more at easternhockeyleague.org and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Also, be sure to subscribe and get notified when next week's podcast is released.